Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Rick Harris, who is the CEO of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals and a 30-plus year nonprofit veteran. He specializes in helping nonprofits grow their business through better membership, education, networking, marketing, and building communities. He is a go-to-market now expert in the field of nonprofit business growth and is well known for helping nonprofits achieve their goals through better business planning, marketing, and building their communities through his 20-plus years in nonprofit management. Welcome, Rick. Before we dive into all things nonprofit, would you share something about yourself personally?
Yeah, I'm an East Coaster who just relocated to the West Coast. And I thought, hey, when I retire, I want to live out there. And then I said, why wait till I retire? Let me just go live out there right now. So I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I love it. It's just incredible. It looks a lot different than Washington, D.C. or New York City or Chicago, but it's a great place to be. And I also just want to say how happy I am to be here. I'm a fan of your podcast and have watched almost every episode. So to be on it is great. Thank you.
So, well, welcome. So today we're going to dive into talking about helping nonprofits kind of maximize their revenue and their revenue streams. So would you just kind of give us a little bit of your take about what nonprofits should be thinking about revenue? Like what should they be thinking about or what maybe they aren't thinking about? And we'll go from there.
Sounds good. One of the things that I look at when I talk with other nonprofit executives, other CEOs, is that a lot of folks are very insular. They are very cookie cutter in terms of their revenue approach. And what I try to do is to look at things that are much more diverse. So I'll share that with them. That doesn't mean they're always going to do it. That doesn't mean they'll just pick and choose what you think is the best. I have a style, you have a style, et cetera. But what I would do is I would really encourage all nonprofit association CEOs and upper management to diversify as much as possible. You don't need to just make money off of membership, your conference, and your education. What you need to do is to look at how you also make money underneath those with subproducts. And that is the real sweet spot. To do that, you also need to be highly aware of what's going on in your industry and start looking around the corners to see what's needed. So if there's a new piece of legislation on a particular law that is going to affect your industry, then why not hustle together a how-to guide and when I say hustle, I mean make sure that it's accurate, but a how-to guide on how to interpret this. We all do webinars. That's great. People love to have something that they can look at past a webinar or past a podcast, even a walk away. So it's diversify, diversify, diversify. Look for things that are outside of those. And then when you have, let's just say at your conference, what have you not done before that you think might be exciting and new and fresh and that will drive in sponsorship, that will drive in new money? So it's new money that has always been my focal point, and I would encourage everybody to do the same.
Yeah. So I heard you talking about like, take if you might have one or two ways of sharing information with your community, but start exploring more ways of sharing that information as a way, in a way that generates revenue. So, having that guide, having that course. I know from my own experience, a webinar is easy to deliver. It's not really the best educational experience to receive. So there's so much value in sharing things in different formats and in micro content. And I'm totally in agreement with you. That is a fantastic way to diversify. But I want to ask you about the flip side of maybe how not to diversify, because sometimes I hear nonprofits receiving the message we need to diversify revenue, and they start trying to do all different things all at once that are like very different. Like, we're going to do grants and we're going to do major gifts and we're going to do education and we're going to do all this stuff. So tell us about like when is diversification successful and when is it just like flooding the gates and causing overwhelm?
What you just described is the scatter shotgun approach, which is never a good approach. You're just hoping, and you can't rely on business development on a hope. What you have to do is have the strategy and the numbers. So you do that with highly performing current business. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. And it was a lesson in my life that I have kept doing over and over again, and it works. Luckily, I went to one of those Washington, D.C. dinners, and I think my name got mixed up because I ended up at a table that really I had no business being at. And we all know what those tables are. So right next to me was Ted Leonsis, who was, of course, one of the founders of and the architects of America Online, later owns the Capitals and the Washington Wizards. So I was asking him, we were talking just about business in general. And I just thought, well, as long as I have this guy here, I've got to make sure that I talk to him about how to do more business. He's a genius. So he just said to me simply, Rick, diversify. Take a look at what you have right now that delivers a lot of cash. So in other words, if you're looking at a certification program that you have established, how can you re-roll or sell in different ways through that? Now, we talked about study guides and guides. That's normal stuff, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But what I immediately thought of after that conversation was bite-sized certification. Not everybody wants the whole thing. So get bite-sized certification. We rolled out a family at APMP. We have 8 of those, what we call micro certifications. They make more than what we call the signature certifications do now because it's going out to a much wider audience. And it's those things. Look at what you have, not what you want to make up. And if you have to whip it up, it'll take a year or 2 or 3. But what do you have that you can quickly adapt to? What's earning for you? And look for the extra buckets in there. Match a sponsor to a new program that you want. And that sounds very easy, but don't look at little programs. Look at big programs that you want to do at your conference and make sure that a sponsor has the first opportunity at that, or a list of sponsors that are high rollers have that opportunity first because it's taking a look at every core piece of business that you have that's delivering and saying, can I spend another product, 2 or 3 out of that product to diversify? I love your analogy of the shotgun approach. Don't do that. This takes too long. And we're all so full of vim and vigor until that first meeting and they go, how are we doing? And it's got 2 sales.
Right.
Look for things that are going to get you multiple sales out of business that you already have that's performing. Ted Leonsis has said it, I did it, and it works.
So I have this vision forming in my head from what you're describing of like, it's like you have one thing that's successful and you're like building nodes, like variations on a theme. We've got the bigger version and the smaller version and the audio version and the video version and the book version and the blog version and the physical newsletter. So it's almost like, multiplying out versions of things that work rather than diversify in the means of the word different. It's not like we need totally disparate types of activities, but we need to like really multiply by diversifying within the context of something we already know works.
That's it. And as you said, there are more channels to promote all of these new products on than ever before.
Yeah.
Take advantage of every single one of them. Most of them are free. And so, do that. One quick example, APMP had all this great educational content and just really, it was just there. We had collected it. So we created something called APMP TV. We took all the content, had the videos for all the content, loaded it up on there and created TV shows out of them. And basically sent people there, gave them an automatic CEU if they went all the way through. They had to register for it, et cetera. So it contributed to their certification. And again, it's all ticking and tying together, but we made it free of charge. But the thing that we did is we sold so many ads on it because it was new. And everybody in our industry wanted to be a part of APMP TV. So it's just, they're lying all around. You just have to pick up the rock and actually start shaping it.
And I love that example about APMP and related to the one you shared as earlier as well about taking your larger certification and breaking into mini certifications. You're not only increasing your revenue, but you're expanding your impact, right?
That's
Because
right.
more people are receiving learning. People who just would have been totally not up for the full certification are now getting parts of information when previously they would have had none. So it's such a win-win. I'd love to dive into some sponsorship examples a little more. So what are some of like kind of new things that you have done or seen that really help bring new sponsors in or expand existing sponsorship support?
Here's what we say at APMP that we're going to try to do 25 to 30% new ideas, introduce them every year. Now, that doesn't mean that our portfolio has expanded to hundreds of offerings. We do is we call out the lower performing and make space with something that has an opportunity to do well. That's where you make hay because it's brand new and it's people are, particularly sponsors, are looking for the new, the exciting to be able to sponsor. And you go, okay, Rick, this is all you absolutely know how to do this, but a lot of people don't spend the time to say, what is the new I want and match it with a list of sponsors and do it. So what we ended up doing was, the whole FOMO, fear of missing out notion that kind of took by storm 3 or 4 years ago. We did that with sponsorship. So we created sponsorships and new sponsorships. And we would give our highest paying sponsors first crack. And we'd say, watch your email this Tuesday at 12 noon. And we break it down for the different time zones. And there's going to be an opportunity we think you're going to want to be a part of. Now, what we don't do is we don't mismatch. So we don't put an engineering company on something that is so far out of their field. We just leave them off of that. So what we have happened is we have a bidding. We have people who were just waiting at noon. And on one, we launched a new conference over in Europe and we had it sold out for 3 years in 7 hours.
Wow.
7 hours because we only gave it to sponsors that we felt like would be a good match to be there. It's really great to say, okay, that now is taking care of sponsorship. That property has full sponsorship for 3 years. Now let's really work on the content. And it's a rush to it. I also, many, many years ago, when online sponsorship was just starting, I worked for a large association and was selling banners to our association did over $1 million because we took it online and we did this fear of missing out. Be sure to click on here at noon and you'll have an opportunity to. We sold over $1 million in side sponsorship in 3 hours. It's that much of a feeding frenzy, but what you're doing is you're creating the new and the eat, and then you deliver. You make sure that you deliver on the impact and the response. We've never had a sponsor go, okay, well, that wasn't worth it, or that was a lot of hype for very little. We make sure they're taken care of, the winning sponsor or sponsors, they're taken care of in the back end, so that the next time they get that email, they've got not just one person trying to get in, they've got everybody. So all of our stuff goes fairly quickly, and you can do that too just by creating a kind of a campaign or campaigns that release the new. But the kind of bring it back full circle, take a look and say, what can my association, what percentage do we want to offer new? For me, it's always been new rules the day. So it's 25, 30%. And we say, that's what we're going to do. We do the same thing with speakers at our conference, 30% more new people, so that we're not hearing the same old voices, the same people every single year. Wasn't very popular at first with some of those tried and true speakers, but it makes for a better conference experience overall. And our numbers shot up as a result. So everything that you're doing is you're looking at is how to increase, how to take it to the next level, but do so in a way that is professional, and you just use good marketing, not hypey, but good marketing, and you create a competition because people love to compete and they love to win. So if you're one of those 4 or 5 sponsors who locked in early, and then it's done. And you're sold and you move on. And then you have lower sponsors saying, hey, what about us? You create things for them specifically.
Yeah.
It's just, it's matching opportunity to audience and equals more money.
Yeah. I love how, it's like you're saying, like, don't take off your marketing hat when you're communicating with your sponsors. Use all the marketing tricks and tips to get them to be bigger sponsors, new sponsors, right? Do all those things to bring them on board. I see this also applies just kind of for folks kind of thinking about, oh, where should I be wearing my marketing hat? When you're hiring too, is when you also need to be putting on your marketing hat and using all the marketing tricks, and they're not really tricks, but tactics and thinking to attract the right kind of talent for your organization. And actively, great marketing doesn't just attract what you want, it repels what you don't want, so that you don't have to deal with like wading through a bunch of muck. And that's very relevant when you're hiring. It's so important in so many areas. And just to harp on one of my own things I haven't taught in a while is marketing is a skill set. It's a set of tools. It's a set of tactics. It's not, I always say, like, you shouldn't have a marketing department, right? I think departments should be designed on what they're designed to accomplish, right? Marketing is a means to an end. So make your departments about what you want to achieve, and use marketing as a tool in HR, in hiring, in fundraising, in building sponsorships, in running events, in getting your clients into programs, right? Like, you need marketing skills. They're like they are communication skills. So I love that, you use that language about, put your marketing on. I want to highlight one thing though for folks, because I have had some folks recently thinking about how they can make new things for their sponsors and get into some potentially tricky IRS territory of marketing their sponsors to their audience, and which can potentially trigger unrelated business income tax. Is that something you've kind of had to navigate it all before?
I do. And really, it's one thing that I see in associations, and I've done a lot of legal work on this, is what is UBIT? I see a lot of younger association executives die. They will run across the street and go, hey, we need to pay UBIT taxes. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I would have been fit right in with the guys in the Boston Tea Party throwing tea over. how can we not have this tax? So really understand through your legal counsel what UBIT is. You'll find out it is such a small percentage of what you do. If you take it at its broadest definition, almost everything you do in association could fit into UBIT. What we did is we said, no, let's understand it and drill down. Very little of it fits into you. If it's a regular part of what you do, it's not UBIT. If you're creating new things, like sponsorship is a regular part of what we do. But if you're creating a magazine and a magazine is specific for an audience, that is more UBIT related than you're overreaching overall. So my recommendation, and I know this isn't 100% helpful, but it kind of is, spend time understanding UBIT. When a staffer comes in and says, hey, I want to pay, we have got to pay UBIT on this. I go, why? That's the first thing. Why do we have to do it? Make the case why we have to do it. And then we decide whether or not we want to go on with the program, if it's worth it with that extra tax. Most of the time it is, but if it's really worth it. And, but 99 times out of 100, the UBIT doesn't apply to what you're doing. So in terms of sponsorship, it's not there. What it is for ad sales and a couple of other really niche categories. And you know what we've done? We've nearly eliminated ad sales. Why have it? And again, it's to look and see how do we maximize our revenue? You know, the other thing too, Sarah, and I don't know what you think, this is going to be me asking you a question. A lot of people are saying, oh, nonprofit, you shouldn't talk this much about revenue and raising money. And through my years, I found out nonprofit is an older term. It's not really who we are. We raise money all the time and we do it for the benefit of our members. So what I do is to say, oh, no, we run our association like a corporation, a for-profit company, so we can do more. And then you plow that money right back in. But the stop sign is saying we're nonprofit and we should always balance out every year. What you're basically doing is saying, here's a blanket and we're going to put it over, we're going to freeze everything that we have and never grow or not grow that much. What are your thoughts on the nonprofit versus? Yeah.
I've had thoughts on, do we need a rename or rebrand? I don't know if that's helpful, but I like to use the word revenue. I even like to use the word profit. Like sometimes in budgets, like they say like net revenue, but I just go ahead and put that word profit because nonprofits are allowed to have profit. What they're not allowed to do is distribute profit to shareholders.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So you're not allowed to distribute profit to shareholders, but you are allowed to have profit. You should have profit. You don't have to pay as much tax on your profit. And so that's a great thing, which means compared to for-profit companies, what is like baseline for treading water? For-profit companies, it's kind of like 10 to 15% profit is baseline because they have to then pay that much in tax. For nonprofits, I like to think of it as long as you're keeping up with inflation and cost of living, that's your baseline. So it's usually like 3 to 5% profit, depending on where you are in the economy in any given year. But so that's kind of how I like to think about it. I do like to push the word profit. I do encourage nonprofits to be looking at the for-profit world and think of themselves as businesses and really think of their status as a tax designation rather than a whole different type of business. And my other two kind of thoughts on that are nonprofits as businesses typically are more complex than for-profit. Like I work with for-profits too sometimes, and they're just so much easier than nonprofits. Like, so nonprofits shouldn't have this. They have this kind of like for-profit, like, oh my God, if you're from a for-profit, you must know so much about business that we don't. And that's so not true.
Not true.
For-profit people would just they come into nonprofits. They're like, I know how to fix this. And then they're like, I have no idea what to do.
Then they have a board meeting and they know they got to deliver that full thing.
So, and I also just encourage people to be informed, like you said, and to know a little bit of history. Like When I started dealing with the UBIT issue, like you can go to the IRS. They have great training material there. Like do talk to a lawyer, do talk to a CPA, like find someone who can guide you, but read it yourself. I also tell like nonprofits, whatever state you're incorporated in, read the nonprofit law governing your corporation. You will be surprised how easy it is to understand. You do not need a lawyer to interpret most nonprofit corporation law. It's really straightforward. They spell it out. And if you're not sure, most states have a hotline you can call and they will explain it to you for free. So, and same with UBIT. I mean, the history, as my understanding is, UBIT's there because at one point, for-profits were lobbying. They didn't want nonprofits competing with them. So, it is a bit of their like to make it harder for you to make money, but that's the history of it. And just acknowledge that and figure out how you're going to navigate it, but don't like unnecessarily torture yourself.
That's right. That's right. And folks, not everything needs UBIT. No, it doesn't. No matter what you're told, it just doesn't. Very little actually does. And I applaud your statement about learning it on from where you're incorporated and also learning it from an association level.
That being said, I have a question for you, very specific related to that, because sometimes I find lawyers are familiar with UBIT and sometimes it's accountants like CPAs. And then there are plenty of lawyers and CPAs who really don't understand nonprofit stuff. Do you have like any tips for people, like if they're going to find a professional who understands to be their UBIT guide, like what should they be looking for?
Yeah, it's, doing business, and this is tried and true. Business is about people and contacts that you have, people you trust. And what I do is I just put it out on the grapevine. Hey, I'm looking for a new firm to take on this, or I want to start a business, a company, and I want to bring in a firm. And people will tell me, and I'll tell what fits into that. And what I don't want to give the impression, Sarah, is when you're looking at UBIT, figure out how to defeat it.
Right.
What I want to do is just test it, research and verify. Don't take one person's thing of, yep, this is UBIT, and then pay it. If you did that, you'd be paying tens of thousands of dollars a year by what maybe one person thinks is UBITable. And it's not there. So when you're looking, just have a plan of what you're looking for and what you need answered, and not everybody fits. There are a lot of associations with inside legal counsel. There a number of associations who are larger will do outsourced legal counsel. And what it is what I have found is the outsourced legal counsel at times is actually more reliable because I can have a conversation about separate things instead of the lawyer saying, hey, this is the way it's going to be at this association, and they have the board's ear. What I want to be, that restricts being nimble. So as an executive, how can I be nimble? How do I set up my business path where I'm not creating the roadblocks or the gatekeepers, and I'm being nimble? And, while this is not a recommendation of what to outsource and not, know what you want, know the team that you're going to get there with, and say, here's what I recommend that we use this law firm. They specialize in this. And this is what, even if you have inside counsel, and make sure that your inside counsel knows what the outside counsel has said. And generally they agree. So it's really, it's know what you want, have that plan, and talk to others, and you will generally find the right person. I think in all my years, I've only had to let go one consultant that was highly recommended to me. And that's a great track record, particularly when you're talking about employees and the turnover that you have with that. So it's a good thing. So recommendation, and know what you want, know what you want.
That's so.
You do those two with your.
Yeah. I often say to folks, finding the right answer is not the part you should focus on. It's finding the right question.
Yep.
Once you have a great question, once you have the right question, then you can get the answers. And that's really related to knowing what you want. Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing, because part of why I'm so passionate about nonprofits having lots of profit and lots of revenue for their size is because you need that money to fuel making an impact, and you're going to need that money to get over some of the hurdles that consistently prevent nonprofits from making the impact that I think they should. And one of those things is underpaying their staff, being understaffed, partly because they're underpaying, or especially what I see is many nonprofits are understaffed at the leadership level, or they have underqualified staff and it's often related to finances. So, and I know you have some thoughts about equitable pay, and so I want to make sure we capture those before we sign off today.
Thank you so much. It's a passion of mine, and I'll tell you why. And it's as soon as I became somebody who could make decisions about who to hire, I knew what I was going to do. And give you a little bit of backstory. As I was coming up through associations, I realized that I would get regular bonuses, reviews, or whatever, generally for very good performance. But I would get that. But the one time that I didn't, or it was for something else, was, and I don't want to name the association because it was very generous, but I got a bonus simply because I had had a child. And I had a new kid a child brought into the family. And it was this old kind of thinking of, hey, he's got more responsibility. He needs that. What resonated to me, and none of what I'm about to say is political on any sense. It doesn't matter how you vote. I think that you should look at this very easy method. If everybody's not sharing in that, it's not right. It's just not. I have 3 sisters. Not one of them has ever been awarded a raise or a promotion because they had a baby, but I was, and I just didn't understand that. So I said, okay, we got to make this more equitable. First thing that I did was I went and I got the ASAE salary guide, and it's just a compensation report, and it's so laid out, and there's so many different variables. You can hone in on what a fair price is. What you need to do is eliminate the negotiation part of it. You're part of an association that says this is a range that's fair. As an association executive, I think you pick what price is fair out of that range for your association. And then the first thing you do is advertise it. You don't care. You put down, this is what the job pays. And you open it up to everybody. And then you let the resumes come in, and the best resume wins. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. Best candidate wins, and they don't have to negotiate. They know they're getting the pay that was advertised as their minimum. And we never hear negotiation because we just say, no, this is what we think is the price, and that we have it. But what we have found, Sarah, is just that very simple mindset change, that shift of no negotiation, from promote what's fair. Our number of candidates just exploded because this is what they're looking for. Nobody likes a range because you just go, oh, they're gonna low end of the range, and then the bidding war starts, et cetera.
And
so we said eliminate this, bring the person in, and then it makes it fair and equitable to everyone. Why should you? And the real kicker to this, and again, no naming of names, I had a board member, a past board member, look at me and say, I was so grateful I got this great marketing person in for $20,000 less than I would have. And I said, oh, really? I said, tell me a little bit about that. And she did. It was one, she negotiated down another woman's salary. And because she's now part of the corporate culture where that's okay to do. And I said, I think you should lift up, that it should be the same. The way I know it works is at every association that I've employed this with and I've been at, people stay because they know it's fair. They know from the beginning they're going to be treated right. And then what I do is I study that salary compensation report and make sure I'm keeping pace with it. And making sure they don't have to come to me. I'll go to them. Say, okay, here's what we're going to do for you because this is what we're earning and this is what, the guide says, et cetera. And we do it. No negotiation, the simplest math of all. Make one one price for one job, one salary for one job, and then let everybody compete for it. So simple.
I love that. And I think that is so important to list the price. And it's, it's a win-win. I see, like, when you put a range, you actually deter. We talked about marketing, right? Repels the right people and repels the wrong people. But when you put a range, if I put on my marketing, you are deterring the A players. You are deterring the people who really know what they're doing, because they're saying, that's disrespectful to what I potentially bring to the table. I'm not even going to apply. And you don't even know how many people aren't applying when you do that. But on the flip side, if you maybe have a super performer who's worth more than you've listed, but they love your mission and they really want to work with you, they know they'll come to the table and they'll negotiate up, saying, hey, I know you put 150, like, I'm a 200 player and I will make out, like, that extra 50 is going to be coming in. That's on me. Are you interested in that? Right? You don't lose them when you put the number, because they know if they're the kind of person who can bring more, but you will lose them if you try to lowball them or you put a range. So it's like, it's a lose-lose when you put a range and try to negotiate down. And if you have a team full of people who kind of feel ick or aren't, outperforming players, you're going to have less revenue. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a downward spiral.
And what you also do when you do that is with existing employees who have been through the same process, they're seeing it, they see the repeatable process. They know what other people are making. You've now eliminated that whisper, oh my gosh, so-and-so makes 15,000 more than I do because so-and-so told me, and I got a note from I got an email that shows all this stuff. You eliminate it all. It's all eliminated. And you say, hey, we're paying for the position. Yeah. We're not paying for, what someone's gender is or what their earning potential is or what it's not. And then the stars, when they come in, they'll make their way and go up. This doesn't mean creating a low ball. There's a median and a mean, and it's the one that you pick that is your, and you stay consistent to it. So it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in my 30 plus years of being in associations, is having the opportunity to affect that. And the proof is in the pudding. People don't leave when they feel trust. They feel like there's trust and there's communication and transparency. They won't leave.
Perfect. Amazing words of wisdom. Before we sign off, Rick, who should be reaching out to you, and what's the best way for them to do that?
If anybody has any questions or just wants any advice on what to do, peer-to-peer, nonprofit executive to nonprofit executive, give me a call. My number is 240-308-0143, or get in touch with me at rick.harris, HARRIS, at apmp.org. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation, to share with anything. That's what our community is about, is giving great tips and ideas to tips, trends, and techniques and why wouldn't I give them to you at your association? I would. I want to help you out. So that's where we are.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rick. And thank you out there for listening and everything you do to make our communities better. I encourage you to help us here on this podcast grow the podcast by sharing this or another episode with a friend or colleague who could benefit. You can also leave a review and subscribe to the podcast. That also helps. And I just wanted to note, with Rick sharing his phone number, don't forget that the telephone here is one of the most powerful marketing tools we have today, especially because so few people make calls. So call Rick, be in touch with people, get people's phone numbers. That is a bonus tip for this episode. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.